Linus Riddle. I'm a student at Gold Lake High School, and this is for my video game development course that I'm taking at the moment. Um, so, um, Last week, this is what I was working on in the junior programming Unity pathway here, this one. Um, so, what I did last week was um, I showed, or I did all this sound effects things where I made that 2D um, like platformer kind of game that all the obstacles and everything moves to the left, and I made sounds and some particles and everything for various actions. And, like when you run into a box, there would be an explosion or whatever. Um, and then I did my player controlled lab, which I showed off, I believe. Um, and then I also got to the um, most of the gameplay mechanics. Um, and this is where I had that ball on the platform, and all the enemies would go towards it, and then you could get a power up to knock them back further and everything. And then I added loop, like multiple waves, so more enemies would spawn, the more waves there are of enemies. And I did the lab and the challenge for the most part, but at a certain point, the script stopped working for whatever reason. And like no matter where I was, it wasn't specifically in this lab. So that's a good reason to have the back everything up to the GitHub, because I could just jump back to a different point where it was working and continue off there. Um, but yeah, this week I was working through the user interface, um, and I finished up this, and I'd show you this, but it doesn't really work now for whatever reason. So the first thing I did, the first thing I did was I added some fruits that fly up from the bottom of the screen, and when you click on them, they get destroyed, and it adds some score, and that's what this one is adding all the score UI and everything. And then I also made it so that you could game over. And I meant to check that off, but so that everything would stop when the game ends, and also that you can restart while playing. And then I also added some difficulty buttons just before recording this. So I'll show that off real quick. So in user interface, this is the first thing I did. I mean, besides importing assets. Okay, so here's this. You'll see why it's so zoomed out in a second. But here's this. It's a 2D one. So when I run the game, you can see everything that I coded in this part. So first I had these, and when you click on them, they get destroyed. There's no effects yet, but all these get launched up with a certain velocity and torque. And I can show you that script real quick. So this in the target script, this is mostly just to destroy things. Unity has this function that is useful for coding for when you click on something. They also have one for up that activates when you release the mouse. So when you click on something, it just destroys an object for the target. And then this is so that it'll get destroyed when it's below a certain position, basically. The same as I was doing before. So these are all the things that it adds when it throws it up. So it spawns at a random spot on the screen. And then this is the torque, so how much it's spinning. And then here's the force that it goes up, because they go up different amounts. One could reach almost the top of the screen, and one could basically barely enter it. You could tweak all the values here. If I made these public, I could just do it in the inspector. And then in the game manager, I have this waiting a random time and then throwing one up, or waiting a specific time. So 1 second, every second it does that. And if I wanted to change that, I could, just how fast things are thrown up. But then I've used the index to choose the random objects, because in the prefabs I have all my different objects here. And this one's like bad, and these are like the good ones. And currently that doesn't actually do anything. But that's in the next one that will start affecting things. So in the I'll show you in the keeping score thing here. I'll show this off. Yeah, in this one, this is where I started adding the score and allowing the different objects to give you different amounts of points. And I made them all different for the good ones, just so that it had a little variety and everything. So why it was so zoomed out is because the canvas is very large in comparison to all this. So this is called the canvas, and then this is where all the UI will be. So it looks like it would be way off screen, but this is what the screen would be. But just whenever you boot it up, you'll see this overlaid on the screen. And then I have the score value, which just says score there. But I have the score being updated in the game manager. So here you can see that it just adds the score to this. So the score equals 0 normally initially. So it says score equals 0 when I boot it up. So I'll show you that, I guess. The score is pretty easy. Just the different objects will give you different things. You can see that's going up and down when I click on these. So this one gives me like a certain number, and that gives me negative. So that's why it's going negative. And currently you can see that I could just let them all fall without any consequence or anything. And that, yeah. But that's what I do in the next one, is I get everything to be so that you could actually lose and everything. And I also added particles in this one. So they have all these prefabs for the particles in one of these particles here. So these are all the different explosions. I tried to match it to the actual color of the object, so that it would seem more accurate to everything. So yeah, I have a point value here for everything. So these would equal 5, and then like this one equals -10. So yeah, the next one was the game over like lesson that I did, and this is where I added that allowed you to lose, and also added the restart button to everything, so that you can restart without having to close out the whole game and open it again, because that would be pretty frustrating in a realistic environment. So here you can see that I have the game over text right in the center there, and you actually can't see it, but that's because it's inactive, so I can turn it on and off. But it's inactive, so it's just not in your face the whole time. And then this restart button is the same, so that it is also inactive and will only appear when you get a game over. So it sends a message to the log, and then it reads that and it says, oh, it's game over, and then displays those, and the button does all that. So when I boot up, you can see that it's the same as last time, the score and everything, assuming I keep clicking on everything that falls, but see, I missed that one, and so it says game over, and then the restart button appears, which just resets the whole scene. So if this was like a game that kept going after this, and it wasn't just like a arcade game basically, um, then that would restart the whole game every time. So probably wouldn't want that. But for this game and similar things, this works just fine. And then for the last thing I did in the UI or user interface branch was the difficulty buttons and everything. Um, so it's the current, sorry, the current thing. It's what I was working on most recently, and just before this blog. Um, but this allows you to change the spawn rate based on the buttons that are here. And I also added this title. So you can see that these have a difficulty, which actually is set through here. In the difficulty button, I added all this. So it has things like the button. So that just calls it as a button, and rather than just like a image. And this is an integer that determines difficulty. So when you click on these different buttons based on the difficulty, like this one is 2, this one's 3, that makes it so that the spawn rate in the game manager is set equal to that. So easy is what you were seeing before, which is not necessarily super easy, but still that works. And I have this basically, the title and these buttons program basically the opposite as the game over things, so that when the game starts, then these disappear. So if I click easy, then you can see that this is all the same. But then I can fail, and then click restart, and I can click on a medium or hard one, and it still works the same. So yeah, you could just keep doing this, and then if one falls, then I could go back and do hard. And hard is kind of absurd, but then you could also see that when you game over, all the things stop spawning, and also when I game over, you can see that I am no longer able to click on the objects. So that's just I added if the game is running, like if the game over is false, basically, then you can do all those things, like click on objects and everything. But that's basically everything I did this week. It took quite a while to get around some errors in the code, but I got it eventually. And probably later today, I'll be doing this. Next challenge, so fixing a bunch of errors for some things. And then I'll do a lab, which will probably be basically what I've been doing here, just with my own stuff. And then I'll move on to the publishing branch. So, thanks for watching. I'll see you next week, I guess.